This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Today's video is part 2 of making a king-size yo-yo quilt. These are some musings and thoughts that I had that might help you no matter what size of a quilt or small blanket you decide to do with yo-yos. First thing I want to say is about lining up your yo-yos. No matter how big your project is or how small, I took when you saw the other one, you saw that I did a lot of measurement, and I had a stick that I had, a board that I had prepared to mark, and it's been very helpful. But every once in a while, you really need to stop and look at the rows going up and down, your columns. But then I started looking, if I step back and I look diagonally at the quilt, I can see that it's pretty much right on line. But I can see one that's not, but it's too late for him. But if you see one like that, I had two, and the glue I was using, I could still pull my yo-yo up and then move it, and then I just pinned it. And that's one thing that I figured out, that when you're doing them individually like this, if you put 2 pins in them, then that'll work too if you don't want to use any kind of glue. The other thing that I had been thinking about was using the needles, because after I've done about 300 yo-yos, and you have a lot of time to think, even though we've got a movie going in the background and I'm watching different movies, but I just started thinking, well, I'm just going to thread a bunch of needles before I start and then keep going. And so that's what I did, because I found out I could only do 12 yo-yos in an hour. Isn't that funny? I challenged myself to see how many it would be. And one of the things that takes time is doing the knots. And it was really nice that I could just keep going. But you can see I've got a variety of needles. I have a quilting needle in there. I have a straw needle in there. Straw needle's really fun. It's a little longer, but it's sort of supple. Oh, well, anyway, easily bends a little bit and goes where you want it to go. And so that's been a fun thing that I've done. And on this one, the yo-yos are fairly good size, and I want this to last for the person a long time, so I'm using a double thread. And the last thing that I wanted to do was go through 2 ways that I figured out to sew the yo-yos. So I get my thimble on, and I found a nice dark one right there. And you can see the lady that did these yo-yos, she did a really nice job. And I'm just going to pick a needle, any one of them. All right, and I'm going to start with this one. All right, what I did was I thought of it as halves, the top half and the bottom half. This is a lot different than having them sitting next to each other, where you can sort of go up and down and up and down, and then come back and do it again, a second row, since you're doing the whole thing. And I sort of picked that up, and I either put the needle going up or down right here, and I'm just going to go up. And that puts my knot underneath the yo-yo. Don't have to worry about it anymore. And I have found that if my finger goes over a little bit towards the edge, I have a good chance of controlling where it's going to come out on the edge, especially when you've got a nice fabric like this. And then just pull it, and you can see, because sometimes you can't help that the stitches will show. And it's hard. I really wanted you to see up close. And I'm back away from it, so I'm just showing you how I did it across the top. And I'm only catching the top of the quilt. I don't want to go through the bottom. I have the stars in there holding the front and the back together, so I won't have any extra stitches, shouldn't have many extra stitches on the back. But I am going into the batting sometimes, and that's nice. It just slides right through there. So I'm trying to work myself around here to the end. Now, I would generally be making smaller stitches. It seemed like I had like 28 to 30 stitches, which sounds funny, but like I said, this is the main part of the quilt, and I want it to last. And so far, I've gotten about a yard done, roughly, and about 300 yo-yos. Now this one, the thread's already going to be too short to go all the way around. So what I'm going to do is, see, it won't go all the way around. So I'm going to just stop there for a minute, and I'll take that out later. And we're going to pretend this is my needle, and this is where I got to. And this is what's fun. I'm going to take and pick up my yo-yo, and there's a little glue there, but sometimes it goes way up. And I'm just going to slide my thread under the bottom of that yo-yo. Then with my right hand again, I'm going to go back up where I started. And now I'm going to work my way down by going in, watching the edge, and pulling it. All right, I'm going to go down in, come back up, catch the side of the flower, and go out. Now, one of the things that I've seen that somebody did, they did a blanket stitch, and that would work doing this too. If you were going to do something like the buttonhole stitch or the blanket stitch all the way around them, come down. The other thing I saw that lately, but it was from an older magazine, was that the person just did a running stitch all the way around. Okay, I'm going to go, I'm picking up a shadow. I'm going to go down in, pick up a little material, come up. This needle's working really well. And I guess eventually I'll discard the needles that I don't like so much, because sharpness is the thing that counts, and then being narrow enough to get it. So that's one way that I did it, over the top and down to the bottom. And I can tell you, the other thing that I did, and I think I can do it on this one, I do it with this little thread. What I would do is I had gone over the top, just like I started on that one. But if you remember, when I quilt my quilts, I tend to go from the left to the right, and I use my left hand a lot to guide the needle down, and then my right hand to guide it up. Well, so I started playing around and saying, well, if I can do that with that hand, maybe I can do it with this hand. And so when I get over here to the side, I started playing with turning the needle and then catching the thread. Let's see. There it caught. And pulling it up. And at first, you know, it's like even the quilting, it's a little awkward. Anything that you do sometimes for the first time is awkward. And then I can see the edge there. And I slide it through. And about the third flower, I tried that on. I wasn't even paying attention. I said, okay, change to left. I changed to left. And I just flew around the bottom. I said, okay, well, if I'm not thinking about it too hard, then it works. And that'll work too. So that gives you two ways. You can go over the top, slide the thread under, and then sew across the bottom. You can sew across the top. And if you're playing with the left hand stitching it all, then you could just start there and then go back over there and stop. And I just do my knot. I do a knot in it and then pull it through the batting, just like you would in sewing a quilt. The other two quilts I did, there were different kinds of challenges with the yo-yos. This one has been totally different, having to figure out the back sandwich to put it on, putting the markings on it, which are on the other video, and then getting started with the sewing. But I'm really having a good time with this. I devote about 2 hours a day to it, you know, unless it's really bad weather and then we're in the house. So this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope you're liking this project. If you got anything out of this or had fun, please subscribe and hit like, leave comments. If I've forgotten anything I'll write it in the description and leave it for you. The glue I forgot in part 1, so you might want to go back and And look at that if you're thinking about doing it. You have to be real careful with the glue, especially the surface that you're using. Thank you.